Hey guys, how are you? I'll just give it a few minutes. See how many of the doctors join. So I'll give it like 5 minutes. Okay. In the meantime, those who are on, you guys can obviously just pop in the chat how you guys are feeling today. I'll try not to make the session too long. I know it's evening. The session is usually quite long, but I'm going to try and shorten it a little bit because, yeah, I'm sure you guys had a long day also, but, let's push through. I'm just going to give it just a little bit longer to see if a few more come on, and then we can kick off. But yeah, please pop in the chat how you're feeling, and then obviously if you can, just let me know if you guys all caught up with everything, and if you didn't, that's fine. Obviously, just check in with Tanika. But yeah, because today's session we're gonna tie in a lot of the stuff from the previous days. So let me know. Okay. I'm just going to give it 5 minutes, then we'll start. Okay, I'm gonna 1 more minute, then I'll start. Obviously, the sessions are all being recorded. Danica, just on some of the other cohorts that are on cohort 2 that are doing the clinical, can you just check in with them and with Joe for those joining, please? He just wants to make sure that they received the invites, if you don't mind. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I think I'm going to kick off so long. I'm sharing off a I'm sharing off a PDF. So for those of you who probably don't know, I've got a business in the security industry as well. Can you guys see my screen? Let me know, please. Just a thumbs up. You can see. Can you guys see my screen? Okay. So yeah, so I've got a business in the security industry, which is VIP protection and cybersecurity and a bunch of other stuff. And we do some state security work, which it requires encryptions and things on devices. I think so. That's why I'm not always able to share screens and access certain things on my phone. But yeah, so thank you guys for joining tonight. So tonight we're going to look specifically at the GoGP model, and that model is sort of the framework, right? That makes up, exactly what you guys are, exactly what you. Sorry guys, my daughter just got up. Just give me 1 second. One second. Sorry about that, guys. My daughter just got home. So the GoGP model is basically the culmination of what we've been working on. And it draws things from all the sessions we've done with Marlon, myself, where we looked at the customer, defining your product, your value proposition, the business model, etc. So the GoGP model, just for context, so GoGP is basically the framework that all of you guys will operate under. Your business is your business. You are the director. You own it 100%. It's your bank account. It's basically the vehicle that you can run your life through, right? So all the work you're currently doing, even your locum work, should actually be running through a business. I know a lot of the doctors don't do that. But the GoGP model is there to sort of incorporate everything that you guys currently do and then add on all the new things that we want to do. So when you guys engage with SME.tax, which is our sort of administrative corporate secretarial partner, you guys will they'll be the ones that help you with setting up your company, or we'll help you, but they'll be doing a lot of the admin, setting up your business, helping you set up your bank account, doing your financials, all of the stuff that is stuff that admin is oftentimes very stressful for a lot of people. But what's very cool is that we try to position it as a continuation of what you guys currently have. So, for example, if you're currently locuming, I know 99% of you guys are, having that paid into your personal accounts. You just kind of send invoices and so on, which is fine. That's fine to a point, but there's obviously a much more efficient way to do it. And this GoGP model sort of is going to bring all of that into context. So for tonight's session, we're going to look at the contrast between the traditional GP and then this sort of hybrid model, hybrid practice that you guys are part of. We're going to chat a bit about your social capital, building out your trust networks, using your reputation for growth. I think you guys have heard me say this so many times, but the value that doctors have in the industry and in the market is significant. I think just undervalued sometimes, and to a degree, I do not blame the doctor, but I do think doctors don't put themselves out there enough sometimes, and just slot into a role within the industry. And this for me needs to change, and I think this is part of that change. We're going to look at the frameworks we looked at on day one, the customer segments, your value propositions, and how the GoGP fits into that. Then we're going to look at, remember in day two, we looked at the channels, activities and resources and things and costs that you need to consider when you're running your business and starting your business. And then we're going to speak about pivots and growth, which again is back to last week's sessions, but obviously this time just focusing on GoGP. We're going to look at broad and deep channels to get customers, get partners, etc. And then we're going to look at the engines. I call them engine 1, 2, and 3. So engine 1 is the focus engine, where we use the focus device, and you sell that into the market. We're going to look at the virtual clinic model, which is engine 2, which we'll chat about. And then we'll look at also the social or the different products and services and things that you guys can push into the market. And we'll chat a little bit about a growth plan. I won't, like I said, this is quite a long session, but I'm going to try and keep it to an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours max, but I'll push for an hour and a half. So I may skip over something, but I do want you guys to please go and check through the deck, through the slides, read it, think about it, see if you can apply it. And then we go from there. So, okay, so can I ask if anyone who on the call, I won't be able to see in the comments or chat at the moment because I'm sharing off my phone, but if anyone on the call has started a business or worked in a business or worked in a GP practice, locum, whatever, if anyone that's on the call can just just a yes or no, and then maybe just to brief your views and thoughts on what your experience was, working as a young doctor in a GP practice, traditional GP practice. Anybody's on the call can just give a comment or thought on that one. I can't see in the chat, so someone would need to give a comment or unmute and yeah. Anybody?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you. How are you?
And you?
All right, thank you. Good.
So I think for me, that's part there is some sort
Are we
and
losing?
they prefer seeing.
I'm losing you. I don't know if it's just me, but yeah, struggling to hear. Sorry, man.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
Yeah, I was just saying that my experience has been most of the patients they as quite young, especially working in that practice setting. So there is some sort of doubt, and majority of them prefer having, and they think that if the doctor is older, the doctor needs. And I usually come from a point where I'm like, young doctors are up to date. Unlike the doctors, not to talk down on the old, just that I've seen, and that some of them are not also for like a virtual online consultation. They like the traditional route, physical examinations and
stuff. Yeah. Sorry, I lost the last. Are you still there?
Oh, sorry, I was just saying that most of them, especially with the routes that we are taking, empowerment and into having online consultations or virtual consultations.
Yeah.
The majority of the patients, they like the traditional route.
Oh yes, yeah.
I got you. Yeah. In person, yes, physical examination. So yeah, that's.
No, yeah, no, 100% sure, 100% yes. There are definitely still patients who kind of push to that sort of expectation. Anyone else with any realities or any comments? Good, bad? from experience?
Sorry, I
Yeah.
lost a lot of what the previous person was saying, but from my experience locuming for a little bit, I also found that a lot of patients who come in also just come in for that like personal connection. Sometimes they just want that time with the doctor just to have a chat, and
Yeah.
it's often not really about like their symptoms. It's sometimes they want to offload a bit of like
Mm.
mental stresses in the practice that I worked at as
Mm.
in particular. I didn't really do
Where was that practice? Just out of
it.
interest?
It was in Robert Sham in Johannesburg.
Was it a busy like I'll use the term LSM quite a bit, but which LSM or which
I would
part?
say it was like a mid to high
But
LSM. I feel not really a low LSM, and I think maybe that contributed to the kinds of patients that we were seeing.
mm,
Um, yeah, so
were they
that was
older? The
right.
older
A lot,
patients.
a lot of them are older. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, cool. Now, if anyone else that has any comments or thoughts? Um, but yeah, okay. I appreciate those of you that did comment, and if others do want to put it in the chat, please do. I'll have a look at it a little bit later. But I think I wanted to give you guys a strategic comparison between sort of the idea of the traditional GP, right, and then this new hybrid model. And I looked at a few things, things like there's obviously an approach, like we know we've got an approach to cardiac failure, shortness of breath, everything's got an approach, and the approach that traditional primary care general practitioner practices take, there's a specific approach to that. I looked at capex. Capex is something called sort of startup costs or capital to start what you want to do. Then I looked at something called time to revenue, which is a very interesting and very important thing to consider. And that's basically how long it takes you to go from all the time it took to set up the thing to making your first rand, right? And that's something we'll compare. And then I looked at the service mix, how you're able to deliver your service, what can you offer, your reach in the market, your ownership, your brand ownership, your revenue streams. I looked at the two different sides of that, your scalability, and then your growth strategy when you do. So from the traditional side, that model, guys, unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, has in many ways come to pass. The traditional GP setting or framework was great 20 years ago when uh, the market, how consumers behaved, how customers interpreted things, what was defined as value to the customer, the consumer has changed significantly over time. And a lot of the GPs that have established, legacy practices, they just had the benefit of time, right? It's like property. If you look at property prices these days, and even all the boomers always say, you must buy a house. And you're just like, yeah, but when you bought a house, it cost like 10 Rand. Right? So the world has just changed a lot. And these days, property isn't necessarily seen as a good investment, right? It's overpriced. It's difficult to even afford it for the most part, most young people. Um, and I always look at it and say, if you buy a house now, million rand, whatever that's a silly number. Say 5 million rand. It's a lot of money. Over 20 years, you've probably paid back 12 million rand, and in 20 years' time, who the heck's going to buy that house from you for 12 million? So the traditional structure had the benefit of time, and also they most likely set up shop in a space where there wasn't anything yet. Okay, so they had that. So but from an approach point of view, the traditional setting is very reactive, and by that I mean they would sit and wait, and patients would kind of walk in, an influx would come, and they'd react to that, and then they'd see that patient. Whereas the GoGP model and the forward-looking model is a lot more proactive, right? Where it's a case of you as the doctor are taking an offering and a product and a service into the market. And into the market means either to customers, to patients, to small businesses, or it means you're taking it to GPs, etc. Then capex, so cost to start. So in the real world these days, to start up a practice, you got to consider quite a few things. There's obviously finding a place, renovating it, your equipment. Then there's one or two things people very oftentimes overlook, and that is working capital. So you need at least a couple of months of working capital before you make any money. You're not going to be making a cent for the most part in the traditional setting because you obviously got to pay all your costs. There's a lot of fixed costs when it comes to running a standard traditional GP practice. You need to think of customer acquisition costs. So how you're going to get patients through the door, the marketing spend, all of that stuff. And unfortunately and sadly for most, like I do a lot of work with banks, so like Investec and a couple of other banks, and they don't want to lend to doctors anymore because doctors tend to default on their loans because they don't have the infrastructure, the resources to actually run the business. Let's say they get 2 million rand to start a practice. You still need to service the debt every month. You still need to you need to live. You need to all these things. So it puts a lot of pressure. With the GoGP model, fundamentally there's no upfront costs. Okay, so the model is created in such a way that it allows you to receive the tools and the skills and the training and everything else with no upfront cost. The only real cost to GoGP is paying to set up your business, right? And sort of upfront. And that's because that's your business. You are the director on it, you are the owner. That is a structure that we want you guys to set up now that will put you in good state going forward for the next, however many years you wanna run through that business, but that's your business. So traditional setting, you're looking at anywhere between 1.5 to 2.5 million rand just to set up and get a few months of working capital and customer acquisition capital to actually get going. Then when you look at time to revenue, this is basically how long it's going to take you to make your first rand. And in a traditional setting, traditional GP setting, practice, primary care setting, if it's your own, once you set up, there's about 3 to 6 months of setup and administrative licensing, all that good stuff. And that can take anywhere up to 6 months. Then, once you started, you're like, okay, well, I started now, and where are my patients going to come from? You're going to take a good couple of more months to start building a customer base, building a patient base. So it could take you up to 12 months to make any money. I've spoken to some doctors who are in some of the cohorts where they're like, yo, Chad, I've been here for 6 months. The most patients I've seen in a month is 5, which isn't scary, right? If you think about it, you spend all this money, you put everything, you're hopeful that this thing can get you to a point, but there are limiting factors to these things. So that time to revenues is a very important consideration. What's nice and what I want to get you guys to think about is, in your locum work that you're doing, please understand that is a business, that is a revenue model in your business model. So selling your time in the form of locuming is indeed a revenue stream, and it is a commercial model. And that's why we incorporate that into GoGP. We say it is a foundational revenue stream that should continue. Then on the GoGP side, obviously the time to revenue is pretty much, it's almost zero, right? So there's time now in the training phase, of course, where you're learning and you're getting all the skills. You're going to go through the focus training a bit more in detail. You're getting this business training. But once you sign up, there's no... once you sign up your first GP to do focus, the day they book you for your first scan, that's your revenue. You're not having to fetch patients. You're leveraging their patients. On the virtual care, once you get your first few patients scheduled or you signed up, your first consult, we've got doctors in cohort 1, their businesses aren't even set up yet, but they're already seeing patients. And we're like, slow down, because it's so much quicker and easier. If your friend messages you, they're like, hi, how are you today? My shoulder's sore. What do you think? And then in that moment, you'd usually say, send me a picture or video. How do you move? And then you just send them a note to say, take these meds, or it's not too serious. But now what you're going to be able to do is say, actually, here's my virtual care clinic, book a slot with me. This is a transaction. You're supposed to make money off this transaction. It's your IP, it's your knowledge. So that's already sort of happening. Sorry, guys. That's already happening. That the opportunity to go generate revenue is immediate. Okay, so and then when you look at things like service mix, so in the traditional GP setting, you just have one thing that you can do, which is see patients, is consulting. You can just sell 15-minute consults. However, with the GoGP model, there's multiple services you can offer, from focus to virtual care. You can sell services to SMMEs. You can do community activations, etc. You have a lot more flexibility and scope in what you can and could potentially do. Your market reach is a lot broader. You're not just in your local area's foot traffic. You have foot traffic. Your market spans the full scope of the GPs you onboard, the patients from across the country. So there's a much broader reach from a market point of view. And then brand ownership, there are some similarities. Of course, if you build your brand, you build your brand. So that's not too different. But I think the revenue streams and the scalability is where the GoGP model shines in a big way versus traditional, because in the traditional, you have one revenue stream, which is for the most part consult fees, whereas with the GoGP model, there's multiple. And that makes it scalable, right? So when you are able to deliver your service in multiple ways, without you needing to be at a specific place, you can obviously scale that up. Nothing stops you from, bringing in community workers, bringing in opportunities where you are able to collaborate with other doctors, etc. So there's a big, I guess you could call it, or a wider reach for your services as you go. And then again, growth. We've spoken about this in quite at length. So with a traditional practice, so I used to own a medical marketing agency, which we acquired with the sole purpose of helping us build a customer acquisition framework. And that framework is basically a sort of set process in how we acquire patients, right? So there's a funnel, we created a funnel, we built the infrastructure with Meta, Google, we were digital, we were on the ground. We built the whole thing, and that in itself is valuable, an IP that we kind of put in place. But in the traditional practice setting, yes, now a lot more digital stuff is popping up, but it's not as common. And then obviously with our approach, because you are ultimately the IP, it's your business, it's you, right? It's Tasman's business, it's his IP. Wherever he finds himself, however much he's willing to go and do and push is as far as the reach can go. Okay, so that's sort of just to give you guys a high level over sort of snapshot of the difference between the traditional approach and the GoGP approach. And you guys are ultimately front and center when it comes to this GoGP model, because you guys will be operating under this model in your own business that's effectively going to see you taking this approach into the market, which is incredibly exciting. Okay, so then let's just look at something called customer profiles and value propositions. So we went through this in quite a lot of detail with Marlon. But I think we all understood. I think Paul was one of the doctors that was quite vocal last week, and we were discussing. He's starting out of his first practice, which he gracefully said didn't work. His first business didn't work out, and obviously we it sounds weird, but we celebrate the fact that he tried it, right? And yes, it may not have worked out. I mean, I was telling one of my other partners yesterday. I said you basically take 100 shots, maybe 10 land, and in those 10 you find the one that works. But you have to be on the field to be playing. So the fact that we are getting on the field is a big win. But you need to understand and define your customer first. I think some of you guys that spoke about the GP practices you worked at, maybe that's not your type of customer. Maybe you need to define the type of customer you want. The only thing you're working there, obviously, because that's you leveraging that existing patient base, but you need to define your own customer. Okay, so but yeah, these segments and the targets, it's all going to be specific to your reality. So if you decide you want to service lower income communities more predominantly, perfectly fine. You do that. But if you remember, we spoke about there's two ways that you can do this. Either it's high volume and low margin, which means lots of, like, think of Pep stores, ShopRite, lots of customers, volume, or lower volume, higher margin. Think Woolies, think luxury goods, where they're transacting a lot less, but they're making a lot more money on each transaction. Okay, then if you look at if you remember from, I think it was day 2, we had that map which looked at jobs, pains, and gains. Okay, and this again is now obviously detailed or outlined high level to the GoGP model. And if you look at and jobs, pains, and gains, if you remember, was there's jobs being what you can do, and then pains being pain points, and those were pain points for both for customers and partners and other collaborators in the industry. And then gains would be if you look at what you are bringing through what you're doing, what type of gains are you going to be bringing to both your customer, your partner, etc. And that was that value proposition canvas that we worked through. And in this case, right, let's use the focused model, for example. What you're going to be doing is bringing in point of care ultrasound, point of care diagnostics. The pain point you have for the most part is that I guess in the private sector, most of those practices, the GP practices, it's not in their interest really to bring in this type of device because it's expensive and they don't necessarily have time for training. And also in their commercial model, it's not really for their current model, it's not really that it's not going to impact their bottom line much. But also the patients, for them, the pain is that they need the service and they can't get access to it, and public sector usually doesn't have it. But the gains that you bring in for the doctor, for example, that owns that practice, if you're bringing in focus as a service, that's new revenue for him and a better service for his patients, right? And then obviously to the patients, the gain is that they're getting access to something novel, something much needed that they wouldn't necessarily be able to get access to in the public sector per se, but they can now access it through their trusted doctor. Okay, so and I think there's in all the engines which we'll speak about, you'll see there's things we do, like actions that we do, which speak to certain pains, which result in certain gains. And I think that is so important. I was telling you, I think I told you guys on the other day when we did the business model, the value proposition. I said, I think my life in my day-to-day, I think in value proposition. When I speak to anybody, I think to myself, what is my value proposition to this individual? And I do that even into my household. Like, my thought process is around, is what I'm doing going to improve, or solve a problem for this person or not? Like today, it's a super random example, but this guy we know, unfortunately, is going through some issues and so on, and divorce and all this, very sad. But he urgently needs to sell his house because he needs to give part to his wife. And, I go into those discussions with that negotiation with the same mindset. It's a value proposition. What is the value proposition? What's the pain this guy has right now? What can I do to bring gain for him and me? So for me, the value proposition for me would be, if I'm able to get this house at a very good price, I'll take it. I'll find a way to, bring the right partners together. We'll find a way to buy this thing. We'll get the funding together somehow. But there's an opportunity there for us as a collective, perhaps, to buy this house and put it back on the market a little bit later and make a bit of profit. For him, we're relieving the pain in that, he really is under pressure to get this house sold. We can do a deal faster than anybody else, and he will then happily take it because it's solving for a problem. So, and I think that is what that same, it's a transactional relationship, like one of the doctors was saying earlier, that the patients maybe come through just to speak, right? That's a specific value proposition you as a doctor are giving to that patient just by being there and being able to communicate with them. So just to frame that and just to go through that and reiterate that as we go through the session, is just to remind you guys of it's a value proposition process that we're looking at. And even the GoGP model was a value proposition exercise in saying, what is my value proposition to the doctor and to the industry? Okay, so looking at the GoGP model, I hope you guys can see this properly. But effectively, the GoGP model is a hybrid model, which sees the doctor operating virtually and in person in certain instances, and also hybrid in the sense that it is a combination of traditional, where you leverage traditional, and bringing in new. Okay, so the two engines that make up the model is focus as a service, and focus being point of care ultrasound. And this is obvious. This is a model where you take our ultrasound solution, you add on the training, the clinical, the business training, and you go and sell that offering, that service, that product that is point of care ultrasound. You go and sell that to the existing market. And by existing market, we mean established GPs, ECs, clinics, nurse clinics, hospitals, etc. You go and you take this offering to where there are already patients. Because remember, if you go back, what did we say was the most challenging and expensive thing? Is customer acquisition, patient acquisition, is getting in front of patients and getting those patients to choose you. That's the expensive and the time consuming part. So with focus as a service, we're saying we are taking this to the existing patient base. Now that just means you need to go and position yourself in the same way you're selling your time, right? When you're locuming, guys, understand when you're locuming, you are selling your time, and you are selling your time as a service to that GP. And what does that GP have that you don't have? These patients, right? They've got a customer book. They've been there for many, many years. But the value proposition you have to that GP or that clinic or that hospital that you're doing the locum is that they don't want to be there, right? You are able to offer a service at a set price. They are paying you 400 Rand an hour, whether you see 10 patients or 30 patients in that hour. Obviously, that's not possible, but you get what I'm saying. It is a predictable expense for that practice owner, right? He or she knows they've already got a certain patient base. They factor the stuff into their decision making, and they know that they're making at least 4 times the return on investment for the money they pay you for that hour. If you are there for the whole hour and you manage to see 4 patients in the traditional fee-for-service setting, your money, they're making their money back quite quickly. So again, value proposition, think about it as we go. Then the second engine is the virtual primary care practice. And this is a different model in the sense that, if you remember, with the focus as a service, we're selling our offering or selling our service to the existing market. It's not your patients. The same way when you locum, it's not your patients. Your customer is the doctor, right? Understand that you are a service provider to the doctor, the GP that owns that practice. Your patient is not your customer. That patient is a customer of the practice. That patient is either a customer of the medical aid that's being service is being provided by the practice, or if it's a cash patient, it is the practice's customer. But you yourself, as the doctor in that setting, you are providing a service to the practice owner, to the GP. With a virtual primary care practice, the key thing there is that you are now building your own equity in the form of your own customer base. These patients belong to you. These are your patients. These are the types of patients you want, with a service offering that you are, excited to deliver to them. And I think this is very important that you guys see these two elements, right? They both make up the two, I guess you could call it, sides of the story when it comes to the model. And then engine 3 is actually, a very important engine too, and it's your social capital. And social capital, if you think back to what we've sort of been saying to you guys, is that the trust and the respect the market has for the doctor is significant, and it needs to be leveraged. When you guys step into, let's say you just step out for a split second step out of the I'm a doctor role, right? Where I'm seeing patients. Step out of that for a brief moment and put yourself in a boardroom, right? If has anybody on the call, just out of interest, has anybody on the call been in a position outside of seeing patients, where they're at a table, at a in a discussion? If anyone, please share it. I'd love to hear it. Again, I can't see the chats. If you do put it there, please do. You can put it there as well. But if anyone has been in a room or in a transactional environment outside of, because when you're seeing your patients, that's a transaction, right? You are transacting with that patient, and you've also been transacting with your GP that put you there, or you are transacting with wherever you find yourself. Out of interest, has anybody been in a business discussion or commercial discussion or any discussion outside of the traditional doctor stuff? I'm gonna just hear from you guys if possible. Anybody? Nobody? Has no one been outside of the traditional setting? Okay. I'm gonna assume then nobody. But when you find yourself outside of the traditional setting, trust me when I tell you, you are most likely going to be the only doctor in that discussion. Right? We are so used to being surrounded by other doctors, in hospitals and ward rounds, and it's just you're just another doctor. But there's only 27,000 of doctors in the country. So when you find yourself outside of the clinical setting, even outside of academia, you are, praised and valued significantly. So, so those are the sort of the main engines that make up the model. I'm not going to go back, what we spoke about. We looked at the frameworks, the toolbox. We looked at the customers and the value proposition canvas. Please go check it again and after this and see how it ties back. Then the business model canvas, we looked at those 9 blocks, if you remember, the channels, the activities, your different resources. Marlon kept saying, resources, partners, the cost structures to all these things. And then day 3, we looked at pivot and how you grow. And we spoke about the broad versus the deep channels, etc. So you guys remember this value proposition canvas? I spoke about it at the top, the jobs, the pains, and the gains. Always, most important for the most part is to focus on your customer and your customer profile and think of what your offering is doing, right? Whether it's in the form of products and services, the things you're doing to create gain, the pain relievers that you're coming up with, that obviously is going to translate into your customer, and your customer profile is oftentimes going to dictate the value proposition. So if you feel you want to service a certain type of customer, for example, female, I don't know, students, maybe you want to focus on something like contraceptives or women's health related stuff. If that's the customer profile you want to define, you will then say that's the type of customer I want. I will then look at my value proposition canvas to say what can I do for this customer to make their lives better, to get gains, which will ultimately be which will result in them being happy to pay you money for your service, right? Because ultimately that's the end point is a transaction where where somebody is actively paying you money for something that that they want or that they need. I'll give you a good example. So one of my businesses, and you remember Marlon spoke about, we looked at the ladder and we said at the top of the ladder, one way to grow is through acquisitions. And in the acquisition space, I'm busy buying a very cool medical practice now, primary care facility, and my value proposition to the seller is the fact that I'm in the industry. So they are effectively, I'm maybe not so straightforward customer and so on in this setting, but ultimately they are target and a business that I want to buy. And the value proposition from my side is the fact that I'm in the industry. I've a lot of knowledge on setting up and running and growing a business, and I understand the legacy that they built and how important it is to maintain that legacy. So potentially that means that if I was standing there and I made an offer, so my offer, for example, was 28 million rand. That was the offer I made for the practice. So I want to also tell you guys because you can see once you've built equity in something, it is worth something. Someone is willing to pay for it, right? In our setting now, we're building from the ground up. We targeting to get to a certain amount of money for you guys to make every month, but in this setting, my offer to them was 28 million rand. Someone else might come tomorrow and offer 35 million rand. But I'm confident in the fact that my value proposition is not defined so only by the amount of money I'm offering them. For them, it's a case of they they know what's going to happen after the business gets bought. They trust our team and what we stand for. And we have a good understanding of what they built and what they want going forward. So again, value proposition there is there's a pain point for them. They're old now. They want to retire. They want to sell it. There's a pain point. They've declined every single offer. Doesn't matter how much money it was up until now. So I think why I'm just telling you that is just to understand and recognize that there are value propositions and customer profiling in every single part of what you're going to be doing. So again, just to reiterate, the two sides of the value proposition canvas. So I had to define in the same way that you guys are going to have to be defining, your value proposition to the market. I had to define that for the doctors that I'm building this GoGP model for. And for me, I looked at things like what are the pain points? Okay, it's startup capital for the practice, it's experience, business knowledge, skills, expertise. The doctors only have one way to generate income, selling of time. They don't necessarily have their own brands. So those are all the things I looked at as pain points. Okay, how do I build a model that relieves those pain points? And that's sort of what we're trying to do, right? So it's no upfront cost. It is giving the tools, the business, commercial tools, clinical tools, all those things coming together that we've worked on over the last few years and said, okay, now this is something that we can put into the market. It's the same process. We have a business model canvas and everything, right? That's the model, the approach you take. For you guys going to the market, the value is obviously that in the setting of the GP practices you're studying your services to, for example, you got new revenue streams for them with no capital outlay to buy equipment. For the patients, you obviously again bringing in a tool, a service that they wouldn't have access to. You are able to come up with ways to service the lower income communities. You'll see later you've got an opportunity to service SMMEs, etc. So there's a lot of value both ways. So for the doctor to the market and for us to the doctors in the model, which defined why we made the model in the first place. Okay. So if you remember on the slides from previous days, there was that. I do need to send you guys still. Danica must just remind me. Must send you guys the growth slides from Marlon. I don't think you guys got those yet. But if you remember, in the business model canvas, there was obviously the big canvas. So this is the same thing. It's just not in the form of a canvas. But we're looking at the same elements. There's segments. There's, again, value propositions. There's channels to market, customer relationships, your revenue streams, your partners, the activities you're going to be doing, your resources, and then your cost structure. So you guys can read this when you're going through it. because ultimately I've just sort of broken down the GoGP model into a business model canvas. So you'll see again, it speaks to the focus as a service, your GP clinics, your virtual consult patients, your value proposition, we've defined it, the channels to market, how you're going to go to market, your customer relationships. We'll go into a bit more detail, but that's a very good overview of what the GoGP business model canvas looks like, which I think is very cool to have a look at. And then again, if you remember, we spoke about acquisition and retention. Those of you remember that, and this is probably, like I said, the most expensive is one part of it. It's expensive, but also it is the most important thing when it comes to building and sustaining a business, and it's one of the most overlooked things in the healthcare space. Unfortunately, private primary healthcare, for the most part, a little bit more speciality side, it's a little bit better, but for the most part, primary care, the private sector and the public sector is not very customer centric. And notice, I don't say patient centric, I say customer centric. Patient centricity is a term that has been thrown around a lot, and I don't, everyone talks about value-based care and patient-centric care, and yes, I think in principle a lot of people think they are doing it or want to do it, but aren't necessarily doing so in the best way possible. And I use the terminology customer centric, and that's because if you remember, we spoke about the coffee shop. Sometimes you go to a place, the coffee might not even be that good, but just because of how they treat you, you go there again, and you take people with you, and you want to go and experience because you feel welcome, and this is the part of retention and acquisition that's very important in healthcare. And there are two main ways which we know. We can do broad or deep, and broad is what we call what do you call this? Spray and pray. So you just kind of put a bunch of stuff out and hope it works, right? And that's what a lot of bigger brands and companies do. But they can do that now because they established. So they can do the big campaigns and the billboards and the crazy stuff. For our model and the GoGP model, and I think for the delivery of care as a business, you need to focus on the deep customer acquisition and retention. And by that, I mean forming partnerships, relationships, going into communities, establishing commercial relationships with businesses and institutions and small organizations around where you are. Start with friends and family, go and build relationships with the GPs. That is going to be, for the most part, for the first 6 to 12 months, is going to be a big part of what you're doing, is building out those deep networks, deep relationships, because from there the stuff that stems from there is incredible. Because once the market knows you're there and they know you're offering something bespoke, unique. Remember, I asked you guys what's the value proposition for a doctor, and luckily, okay, you guys didn't say that it's being a doctor, because that's not really a value proposition. All doctors are doctors, and you deliver care. But what separates you from the market? And that's kind of where the GoGP approach comes in. And if you look at even what we did, right, with building out this model, we didn't do any big publicity and things like that. Or, okay, we did a press release and so on just to get interest. But our real sort of channel to getting doctors on board and recruiting doctors was deep, right? We went via trusted networks, because doctors trust certain networks like SA Docs, locum-based, recruitment agencies, etc. That was a deep acquisition strategy. And then the retention is equally so. So we're trying to keep the group small. We try and check in and follow up and give support. So that deep approach is really what is going to translate even onto your guys' side when you start engaging with the market and dealing with GPs and your patients. So just very, very important to realize how this is being mapped out. And then again, I'm going to refer back to the ladder that Marlon had in the session. I think it was day 2 or day 3, where we looked at growth, right? And I want to just highlight here that if you look at deep versus broad, when I say deep, I mean deep. We're going to start closer. So when it comes to growth, you'll start with your friends and family. You soft launch your services you're offering into your friends and family, your virtual care, etc. You start there, and then you're going to go collaborate with GPs. You're going to go and speak to as many GPs as possible. We've got a very interesting business, a physiotherapy business, which you may or may not have told you guys about, but um, when we launched our physio business, we were selling. So we were doing it in traditional sense. Initially, you have a physio room. Patients come there when they had an injury, sports injury, or something like that, and they would just find a physio practice eventually after nothing else has worked. And what we then ended up doing was, if you look at the GP model, the doctors don't treat pain musculoskeletal stuff properly, right? So M codes are basically pain codes, and any M code or pain code should have pharmaceutical and non-pharmaceutical intervention. And what would happen is the doctor would just say, let's say, come with back pain, they give you your analgesia, your anti-inflammatory, and they would just like make a note and say you should go see the physio. And what would happen is then obviously the patient won't go see the physio because not the doctor doesn't coach them through the care pathway. They just kind of say it and then say good luck. And then what happens is for that doctor, there's no incentive to push the physio because if you think about it, he's just going to give, if the patient comes back again, he's going to give him more pain pills, which is another consult for him. So what we did was we now take our physio service and we sell it to doctors, to GPs. And that does two things. Number one, it means we don't have to market our physio services, right? We don't have to go spend crazy money on customer acquisition and ads and whatever. And if you think about the hospital setting, when you're in the hospital post-op, the doctor will just say, refer physio, and there'll be a physio that comes to see you because that physio is working in that hospital and is contracted with the specialist in the hospital. So we take the same concept, we take it into the primary care setting, and we sell the same service to the GPs. But the challenge here is that in the hospital, obviously, when you post-op, mobilization is critical. You can't. That's part of the treatment protocol, and that is set. However, in a primary care setting, it is also part of the treatment protocol. You're supposed to go have physio, a couple of sessions, but it's not communicated to the patient's customer properly. So what we did is we did deals with about 50 GPs, and basically these GPs, we go in and we coach them. And the same thing you guys are going to have to do when it comes to the focus, right? To identify when to use it and how they should be booking your scans. We went and we said to the doctors, we are a physiotherapy business. This is how you speak to the patient. So when you see a patient with a pain issue, back pain, shoulder pain, whatever, instead of saying you should see the physio, what you say now is, as part of this consultation, right? This is us having to coach the doctor. Just remember that we need to put in the work to change the way that this is communicated. So my physios are speaking to doctors and showing them how to, not showing them, but just engaging them on how to engage the patients on making physio accessible. So they would go in and say, tell the patient, included in this consultation is a free physio screening, right? At no cost to you. And that results in our physio session. So then the front office would book that patient for a physio session the next day or the day after. Then they book, like 5 or 10 or so screenings for that day. That means my physio gets time with that patient, right, for free. We didn't have to spend a cent on marketing up yet, but we just got in front of 10 patients. And then it's up to my physio to communicate and converse with that patient to make them understand why it's important to get physio, right? And then in that scenario, it's easier for the physio to convert the customer to a paying patient than it is the doctor because they don't understand it that well. But the physio can do it because they know what they're doing, right? They that's their thing. So now if 5 of them convert to a paying customer, that's a big win. And then we give a kickback to the GP. So he or she is happy because, he's now making money off this physio consult as well. Because it's basically additional consult that happened away from that doctor without him having to see the patient. He's earning off it. And we're happy because we're getting access to these patients. We're building our patient base without having to market. So again, by mapping out the customer profile and the value proposition, we were able to come up with an offering that would see us, number one, give patients access to holistic care, but also give us access to patients and doctors to generate additional income. That exact same model is the focus model. If you think about it carefully, it's the same thing. You're just selling it to the GPs. So then the other way to grow, for example, here is community outreach. So what's nice about you not being set in a practice is that because you are ultimately the business, how you deliver yourself or position yourself in the market is the win. And I think if you remember, I said to you guys, the patients are expectant and dependent, actually now more than ever, on the doctors coming up with ways for them to service them. So if you enter the community, you come up with a way for a business to fund 1,000 consults for the community. Someone must pay for it. It's not for free, never for free, right? But someone else must pay for it, and you have then got a mechanism to go and deliver a service because you are out there. If you find like we're doing this program now in Mitchell's Plain with a grocer, like a grocery store in the area, where we give care vouchers basically, which we'll give you guys access to that. But patients who shop healthily, we almost created a mini vitality in this little community where patients earn points in a way to get access, and then the shop, the grocery store buys a couple of maybe 1,000 consults, and then they incentivize their customers for buying the stuff that goes off the fastest. So again, think about it. There's a value proposition both ways. That GP business, our GP business, for example, benefiting because someone has bought 1,000 consults. They paid us 40K as an investment into this thing, and there's 1,000 consults available. The shop has food that goes off, and when it goes off, they lose it, they don't make money. So then they run a promo to say, you can get a free consult or a complimentary consult from us if you buy certain amounts of healthy foods, etc. So think vitality, but where you find yourself. It doesn't have to be major, massive scale. Then, loyalty and referrals, like I spoke about, and paid digital is obviously a broad customer acquisition approach or growth strategy where you build your own persona on online, which is definitely something I think you guys should all do. We're gonna push for that too, but over time. And then you're gonna look. You'll see there's something called work care, which is a corporate package thing. And then you guys you just scale and iterate this over time. So so you guys can look at that detail. So let's now at 7 o'clock. We have 30 minutes. We've got quite a few slides. I'm gonna try and work through the slides a bit faster. Because I really don't want to keep you guys too late because I don't want you guys to. So I'm going to go over the engine one, right? Focus as a service. We're going to go into some detail there and how that will work. And then I'm not going to go into the canvas now. You guys can read that. Then I'm going to go into the virtual practice overview a little bit in detail. And then again, the financial metrics there, I'll just give you guys as an example. Then I want you guys as an exercise, I think, to go and work out the canvas. Obviously, it's easier, but think about the canvas segments and the parts and how this fits in. Then I think we should be able to finish by 7:30. Okay. So everything I went over now before this is obviously still relevant to what I'm going to go through now, but it's just a sort of overarching high level, not high level, even detailed, but it's just these things we're going to look at now make the other things we spoke about kind of come to life. Okay, so engine one, you remember we said there's engine one, engine two, and engine three. Engine 1 is the focus as a service. And that's the device you guys are getting. That's the U image. Very cool. I designed it, developed it. Very exciting. How it works? It's basically the hardware is a probe like that, and it's got two heads: a curvilinear and a linear probe. And it is basically pocket size or hand. It's the size of your palm, smaller. It weighs barely any. It's like a cell phone. And with this, you get a tablet. So we give you guys a Samsung tablet, which basically becomes your little business in a box, right? And on that tablet, you set up your business WhatsApp, get your own SIM card, your own number, and then this is then your virtual practices WhatsApp, right? And how the device works, very cool. It's a wireless device, so it connects with something with direct Wi-Fi. So basically like a hotspot to transmit the images that are being captured onto the tablet. And there's an application on the tablet that allows you to view, and you're obviously doing your scan, and you can freeze, you can annotate, you save your images, your videos, etc. So that's how the device, the focus device itself works, and it will be your kind of your tool. Okay, so how it's going to work is all of you guys are in cohorts. So there's cohort 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 and 2 are together, 3 and 4 are together. In this model, you will, and why we made the smaller groups is that you will basically pair up with a doctor in your cohort that's in the similar region or area to you, and you guys will share or partner up on this device. And why we did that was we wanted you guys to understand sort of logistically planning it, and also just have like a clinical partner, just someone to work with. It's not your business partner per se. It's just someone that's your person, your partner that you're not alone really in doing this. Then what you do is, as you're gonna sort of understand the business model now, and you work through this, you will then do what's called a MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, or SLA, which is a service level agreement. How it will work is you will then go and do transactions and deals with GPs. Okay, and that's very important because the reason I'm pushing you guys to do that is because it's going to make you get out there and go and speak to GPs. You can sign up as many GPs as you want, right? If you are adventurous and you feel like, being very busy and making good money and servicing lots of patients, nothing stops you from finding 50 or 100 GPs across, a certain region, territory, to go and sign up and become a partner of yours. And that's the beauty of it, right? You are wherever you are. That is where your business is. So you need to go and have these discussions to see these doctors and negotiate with these doctors and explain to them the offering and say, this is what I have to offer. This is how it's structured. I come in, I will show you, when and how to scan. This is how much you can charge. Anywhere between 500 and 750 rand. This is how much I'm prepared to give you off each scan. So there's a split. It doesn't 80/20 is an example, but yeah, there's a split that you agree with that GP, and then you figure out how you're going to schedule it. For example, if the GP is quite busy, I'm using one GP as example, quite busy, they see a lot of young pregnant women, or they see there's a lot of older people, they need aspirations and things. They then, maybe they see on the Monday, they see 10 patients who could potentially be scan candidates. They will then arrange with those patients, okay, we need a focus scan. My doctor's coming on XYZ day. And the front office lady then books it, for the Wednesday. She books all 10. They communicate with you on WhatsApp, on your dedicated WhatsApp line. Say, hi doc, these are all the patients booked for the day. Are you available? And then they'll schedule the patients accordingly, and you go there. So they book with you, and you go there. You already know how much money you're gonna make for that day. Right now, it's not selling hours and time anymore. You're not gonna be there 400 an hour or something. If there's 10 booked and you're able to do 10 scans in an hour and a half, you're gonna bill for that. That's how much money you're making that hour. Then the next maybe take a break, travel time. There's another GP that booked you. You go to that GP. Okay, so you're gonna scan on site in person in that doctor's rooms, not your rooms, not your patient. It's that doctor's patients, right? So you do your scan real time. You send the image or the video or the report, a simple report on the software. You'll see. You can send that to the patient directly or to the doctor. Depends what that doctor's way of work is. Okay, and that's then how your focus as a service model is going to work. So now, if you think about the practicality thereof, the only thing that's limiting you is like it will probably be time. But that's the beauty of the fact that you are leveraging multiple practices. If you have 10 practices, they all have different patients, different things going on, etc. And you are just operating across all 10 of them. You don't have to spend a single cent on customer acquisition. The only thing that you're spending is a variable cost, which is basically a percentage of the revenue that you were making. But you're getting access to patients directly. Okay. And then at the end of it, you then decide how you want to invoice that doctor. So you guys will meet the guys from SME.tax, which is our sort of administrative accounting type partner. And there's an invoicing system that you guys are going to use. And then at the end of each week, right, you're going to invoice. And then you'll invoice all your doctors for all the scans you did. And ideally, you decide how you want them to pay you, but it will either be a weekly thing or a monthly thing. But you are going to invoice the GP, the clinic, the nurse, whoever else. You're going to invoice them for the scans you did. Then when it comes to the cost and the revenue and how that's split, there's a couple of parts. So you're gonna, depending how much you give back to your doctor. These are just numbers as an example, guys. It's not set in stone. Please. I just put it in for to demonstrate it. But let's say it's 20% that you're gonna give back, or you're gonna give per scan you do. Remember, you have your relationship is not with the patient. It's with that doctor or that hospital or that EC, whether it's a mediclinic, whether it's a ambulance service, whoever you're doing your focus scans for, your relationship is with them. Whether they decide to accept cash or medical aid or whatever, that's up to that practice owner. Yes, obviously they can bill medical aid for these things. There's codes for that. But it's your relationship is not there. Your relationship is with that GP. So at the end of that week, you're going to invoice them. This is how many scans I did. Please pay me. And they will then either pay you, because you're a service provider to them, they'll either pay you, from money received from medical aids, from claims, or it'll be cash that the patient paid. Okay, so very important to understand that your relationship is with the practice owner or the hospital or the firm that's running the EC or the nurse or whoever. And then in that relationship, they obviously retain a percentage. Then we have something called a pledge or a surcharge. So what we've done here is, and this is very important, and I want to discuss with you guys. So because we had to prove that this commercial model is sustainable, we've introduced what's called a pledge, which is basically a sustainability pledge for us to do this again or to expand the model. So basically, for the first 12 months, so if you look at a business, there's fixed cost and variable costs, right? And fixed cost is basically every month costs that are needed to run the business, and then variable costs, they're variable in the sense that they are dependent on how much money you're making and how much you're doing. And these are variable costs. So in a traditional GP primary care setting, the fixed costs would be things like rent, paying your admin lady, all your insurances. What else is a fixed cost usually? Internet, all those things, and that can easily, quickly rack up to, like, for example, in my practices, our running cost to run 4-5 branches is R1 million a month, right? So that means I need to generate at least R1 million a month in revenue just to cover, all the fixed costs. Ours is a bit different. We have a hybrid model, which I don't want to explain to you guys really now, but just to understand that there's fixed costs and variable costs. So this pledge or surcharge is because of all the partners involved and the funders and all these things. Each one has different requirements. And we then said, okay, one of the funders, one of the partners rather, is the IDC, which is it's a massive state organ, which is involved in these types of initiatives. They wanted us to prove that this model is indeed sustainable. And obviously, in any business, any real business, there are costs. So we introduced what we call a sustainability charge just for the first 12 months, just so that we can show that if the doctors were to have bought this thing or acquired it themselves, whatever you want to call it, and start this thing from scratch, it would still be feasible and sustainable. So that's what that sustainability pledge or surcharge is. That money is not money for us. It's not profit or anything. It literally goes into a pool, and it is going to empower the next cohort of doctors, basically. So that's the purpose of it. Yeah, so that's sort of how the engine, the focus as a service model works. Then I just wanted to give you guys a practical example, and this is a real patient from one of our doctors. Not necessarily in the initiative. He's an older doctor who operates on this model. So this patient was seen at a GP about 7 times, like literally 7 times. The same patient came with the same issue. And that GP, again, no, not speaking bad or anything on this GP, but all the GP did was, and again, not wrong, but just said, should refer, for a scan. They didn't know what it was, but there was every time they referred, the patient either didn't go, or they couldn't afford it, or that type of thing. And it was a lower LSM patient, so she was going to end up in a public sector space for the most part, and public sector wasn't accepting because there was no imaging and was struggling to get a surgical date and everything. So what was very cool was one of the doctors, our doctor that does this, was busy doing around, I guess, or engaging with some of the practices in their area. And this is a service they offer, and they booked our doctor to come see. And obviously, could do the scan real time, charged about, I think it was 500 Rand for the scan. Patient paid for it, no issues. Paid for the scan, and we were obviously able to then see a thyroid cyst, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was a thyroid cyst. And what had happened after this was that because we had a record of an image, and we were able to, quickly, I guess, make a decision about this patient was then quickly referred to a public sector surgical department with evidence, with imaging, with everything, and was able to get a booking much faster. So that's something called patient disposition. So yes, it was a cost to the patient, but the value added is significant, because to that GP, to that patient, her GP is now amazing. Right? She went to her GP. He was not seeing her. Well, he was seeing her, but he wasn't able to do much up until this point, where after we introduced the U-image intervention as a tool, he was able to let the doctor come. And I mean, just he told me, like, the patient's face, just seeing this thing coming out of his pocket and using it, was just like, it went from 5 out of 10 experience to 10 out of 10. And we were able to generate income from it. And then most importantly, ultimately, we accelerated how quickly this patient got to the right level of care. And that is something that's very important for you guys to realize, that these types of interventions, these models, these innovative models are by nature going to have something called a flywheel effect, which is ultimately that where you find yourself, you are going to create new care pathways that weren't there before. And that for me is incredibly exciting, because your reality is very different to anyone else's, and your lived experience is very different to anyone else's. And you're going to have the tools and the freedom and the mindset to now identify things that will ultimately improve the patient's outcome. Okay, so again, just looking at the workflow, you do your deals with your GPs. That's going to be hard for you guys up front. Well, not hard, but it's going to challenge you a little bit to get yourself out there, go and have as many discussions as possible with as many GPs as possible. You will get some pushback, some won't understand it, etc., and that's perfectly fine. You just have as many as possible. You'll figure out a workflow with them on how they're going to book you. Then you'll come up with, you'll have your standard call protocols, scanning protocols, how you do your scan. You work out your workflow in your own way that makes you comfortable. Nothing's prescriptive, nothing is right, nothing is wrong. It's how it works best for you. You will most likely figure out a way with your GPs as you contract. Each will be case by case. Nothing will be standard. We'll build up the sustainability pool, and then that's sort of how we go to market. Okay, so that sustainability pool, like I said, is just a pool that we're gonna be building so that we can do this again with more doctors. Then again, just very high level, just a reference, just an example. But let's say in month 1, you manage to sign up maybe 5 GPs, and they each book 1 scan a week with you. So you're doing 1 scan a week. By the end of the month, you're doing 20 to 22 scans. I'm using this, again, we use 550 at the top as an example. And this is a 20% split. So let's say your 80% is 440. For your 22 scans, you're generating 10 grand. Just remember that scan's going to take you maybe 15 minutes in the beginning when you're still getting comfortable. But before you know it, if you remember, like in East, you used to do scans very quickly. Yeah, so you could do certain scans very fast. Then we have the surcharge, the sustainability pool. That's another cost there. I'm just showing you guys the costs. Then, okay, that's nothing. Then there's certain costs that are going to be that you already have. So your insurance costs, there may be some travel costs initially. I didn't really want to put marketing here because we're going to be doing the deep marketing. If you remember, we're going to be building relationships. It's more just your time to go and build those relationships. And then again, worst case, I'm giving you guys the worst case scenario. After all the costs and everything, you're sitting at 3,000 and profit. Okay, but as the scales up and you now get to month 12, again, just an example for what's the right word I'm looking for now? Illustrative purposes. Let's say you build up, a couple of more GPs, and they're starting to book you more frequently. More and more consults are coming through. Now you're doing 150 scans. Boom! Now you're quickly doing, after your takings, you're sitting at like 66,000 Rand a month revenue. So as you can see, the more you expand your doctor network of GPs, the more revenue you're going to generate, and then your costs start sort of flatlining and your margins go up, your profitability goes up. Okay, so then again, my activity for you guys is to go look at the canvas, the canvas for Engine 1. And yes, I have mapped it out already, but think about it and go map it out according to the segments, the value proposition, and the revenue channels and all that stuff, and work out how you think would be the best way for you to do your business or run your Engine 1. Again, these are just 2 slides I took from our previous few days where we looked at how we are creating value. And I think we've spoken about this quite a bit, as we've been going. It's all down to that value proposition process you follow. And again, does what you offer fit the customer you've identified? Is this a fit? Okay, so I think I'm going to pause here for 2 seconds. If anybody has any questions, I know I'm sharing. Does anybody have any questions now on kind of what we've gone through now? With regards to the engines and if there's no questions, you guys can just give a thumbs up. But yeah, I'm gonna continue then now. Is anyone no questions from anybody? You guys are fine? Any questions you guys can also put in the chat if you want. That's also fine. Okay, so we're going to go into the second part of it now, engine 2, which is basically your virtual practice, right? And if you remember engine 1, we were specifically looking at, or we were specifically leveraging existing customer and patient bases, that which we do not have, right? You don't have a patient base or customer base. Maybe you do. That's amazing. But for the most part, when you're starting out, that's the one thing you don't have. Okay. So the virtual practice is basically a very cool, simple way for you to create a virtual care delivery infrastructure, care delivery business. And if you think about a hospital, I think I said it before. You think about a hospital. When you go to a hospital, and you go and see your doctor, you, even though all the names of all the different doctors are on the wall, you know you're going there for your doctor. And that for me is a very good example of how this might work, or how you might interpret it working, because you build your own virtual practice. You go and get your own customers, your own patients. You find, you know, your own types of customers you want, and they ultimately come and see you on your virtual practice. Yes, they may see other doctors, but they are your patient, they're your customer. So that's what's important about the My Pocket Health model, or the My Pocket Health platform. It's a transaction medium. It's not supposed to be the leading thing, or the thing that it's supposed to be in the background, right? It's your customers, your patient. It's just a medium for them to see you, book consults with you, pay, get their health records, get their scripts, get their stick notes. That's the purpose of the virtual care platform. And we'll do a full session on the telemedicine platform later on another stage. Dr. Chanel Marthinussen will do it with you guys. But basically, it's a transaction medium with the doctor side and a patient side. You set your own rates, you set your availability, you create your own profile, what your interests are, how you do things, and then that's what you use to go and you share this with people, and you say you can see me on this platform. Um, this is how you can consult me. And what's very cool is, because it's a virtual care platform, remember, the IP and the knowledge sits in your head. You're the one that went to med school. You're the one that knows what you know. You have what patients want and need. This is just a way for you to deliver that to them in a safe, secure sort of space, and where it ensures that you get paid. Okay. And just because it's a virtual practice doesn't mean it's only a virtual practice. I know a lot of people have, previous groupings have asked us, you know, how does it work if you think the person needs to be seen in person, et cetera, et cetera. And what, like I said before, on the flywheel, you are able to create new care pathways. And those new care pathways could even be things like partnerships with other practices. You know, if a patient comes through and they pay you 400 Rand a consult, for argument's sake, and you on the consult and you're a bit uncomfortable, and you think the patient might need another, you know, actual in person, understand that if they're going to go do that in person, um, it is in your best interest from a value proposition point of view to not let them pay again. So you need to have partners, right? Partners in various countries, various regions, provinces, cities, etc. You're going to have to go build up that network of doctors, so that if your patients do need to be seen, they can go there and it's already paid for. You then need to have an agreement with that doctor to say, okay, I'm going to give you 30% of the consult value if you just do the examination for me. And then in your referral note, you can send that referral note and say, please examine abdomen, for argument's sake. And patient will go examine abdomen, and then the patient has been seen without having to pay again. But think about the value you are creating, or bringing, or adding rather, to that patient's life from a care experience point of view. Okay. Other option is you find a nurse in your area that you want to collaborate with, and you can do the same thing. One of the other doctors came up with this very cool model where they identified a community worker that they trained up that could do blood pressure, HCT, that type of thing. And you know, the virtual care patients would then go and go there if needed. Some even did partnerships with pharmacies. So the smaller privately owned pharmacies, then a lot of them have nurses and little stations. and they would go and do, have agreements with these pharmacies for if their patients wanted to come there and vice versa. So position yourself in the market and say, how do I want to service patients and customers and SMMEs and whatever, all the different types of customers you can. How do I use my virtual care clinic as a interface for this to take place? Okay, so it doesn't just mean, oh, I just see my patients, for a 15-minute consult. There's a lot more to it. Okay, so again, here, if you look at the workflow and the cost structure, this is very important. And this is the part of running a business or starting a business that I think is very important for doctors and anyone really to understand, because your cost structures dictate your price. So if you've got big overheads, for example, that's why a lot of things we pay for in the market, sometimes we feel, oh, it's expensive, but it's expensive because to deliver that service, there's a lot of costs that make that up, delivery. Obviously some people just charge too much. It's fine. It's obviously the perceived value thing as well, but in reality, for the most part, you always need to reverse engineer the price you want to charge. So if you decide you want to charge 150 Rand a consult, for argument's sake, that's a decision you can make. You can charge 150. If that's what you want to deem as your price point or your value proposition. If it fits with the LSM or the customer you're servicing and you think it's going to be good, then that's fine. But now remember, there's a lot of volume that needs to come through if you want to make the same money that someone who's charging maybe 400 Rand. But you also need to think there's a middle ground. What am I giving up to make it that cheap? There's always something that sort of suffers. And then if you're on the other spectrum, you're charging too much, understand that you might not get as many customers. You might lose clients even if you charge too much. But obviously your margin will be higher. But then what makes up those costs, right? So in the virtual care side, the payment and everything happens in the platform. There's various ways that the customer can pay. There's card, there's EFT. We've even come up with very cool alternative ways for people to pay for care, like vouchers. We've got a platform partnership with this very interesting company, which I did 3 years ago, which uses blockchain to create these little tokens to incentivize people for doing good. And how it's actually funded. And this is the cool thing about a virtual care platform, right? So we basically have an NGO that buys vouchers for consults. So they pay the doctor. So let's say they buy 10,000 consults, right? Our price point is 400 Rand. This NGO goes and buys 400,000 Rand worth of consults already paid for. Our business or our doctors, basically then through the virtual care platform, we offer them vouchers. So we issue them vouchers. And these people then redeem these vouchers on this platform through doing good work. And we also then give them what do you call these things now? Little tests and little exams and things to teach them about, choking or CPR and these things. But they then use these little tests and things to earn these voucher points, and then they can redeem it, and the redeeming it results in they can book a consult. Then they put the voucher code in and they can come and see us. So if you think about it, again, it's just about creating clever ways or new ways for people to pay for access to you. And the fact that you have a virtual care clinic, virtual care platform to do it means they can do it in various ways. And yeah, so I just want to give you guys a good example of that. So yeah, basically the patient comes through, they set their bill. We'll do it when we do the full session, but they sign up, they create their profile, etc., and they then book you. So you have your scheduling set out. You know how many consults, when you're going to be available. They book you, they pay in the platform. They then get scheduling reminders. You can then start your consult. Either you're going to video call them or you're going to chat to them in the platform. And then also in the platform, you do your health record, your scripting, your sick notes, referral notes. Everything happens real time. And you can do it. It's a web-based app we built. So you can do it on a laptop. You can do it on your iPhone, your Android, Huawei, Mobicel, wherever. Okay, maybe not Mobi. Oh God, there's a new Mobicel that can do it now. And this is the thing, right? So for the patient, also it's accessible to anybody. Then the platform just takes the 20% transaction fee, which is basically just the admin fee for the payment, and obviously the data storage and all that stuff. And the balance is yours, right? So then you will invoice GoGP at the end of each month for all the consults you did. And that will also, with our accounting partner, will show you how to do that. Let's say you did 100 consults. You invoice GoGP, say, guys, I did 100 consults, 40,000 Rand, please. Send the invoice, GoGP pays you 40,000. It's your money, it's your patient. We just facilitated the transaction. So that's how that would work. And then again, marketing, you'll start small and grow slowly, but you'll start with your immediate friends and family. You'll see in week 3, next week actually, you guys need to, register on the platform, do your session, register your profile, set up set your fees and everything. And you need to get 10 patients to sign up to you to be your patients. And hopefully one of them books a consult with you. So if you go back time to revenue, if you think about time to revenue, you onboard on the platform, immediately you can start seeing patients. Right? So if you decide you're going to build your customer book through immediate referrals, friends and family, you want to communicate, you want to collaborate with a university or soccer club or something, you can go and become their care provider using the virtual care as the transaction medium for it. Okay, so, and then if you want to go onto TikTok, social media, whatever, that's another approach. That's broad customer acquisition. You can do that. You can build and say, yeah, you guys can come see me on this platform. These are my rates, etc. So again, from your tablet that you have, which is your virtual, your tablet that you run your clinic from, basically your business. You have a business WhatsApp, that's your WhatsApp, whatever your clinic's name is. And you can engage with your patients and your customers through that. And then we'll chat about WorkCare in detail when we do the telemed session. But WorkCare, just for context, is basically a SMME, which is a small business, small to medium micro enterprise. It's a terminology for that, where there's staff between like 50, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 people. And WorkCare is something we developed which allows you to sell sort of primary healthcare packages and offerings for virtual consults, wellness, absenteeism, etc., tracking, all of that, to these businesses. And what's amazing is each employee, they pay a monthly fee for it, so they pay you basically. And that means you're now generating revenue without seeing those patients. Yes, obviously you have to see them when they come, but it's almost like a subscription style model where they pay you whether they utilize it or not. Your responsibility is obviously to the business owner. You want to optimize their staff, keep them healthy, do wellness, focus on the wellness stuff, and monitor and manage all their patients, customers, or their staff with chronic issues, to keep them as healthy as possible, because obviously wellness and health obviously directly impacts how well they can work and how much money they can make for the business and. So everything in healthcare, and no one, if anyone ever tells you this, but healthcare is a very important economic driver. And it's something that we need to use a bit more when it comes to engaging potential customers, because if even in the setting of a community where there's a grocery store, for example, or whatever business, right? For these businesses to thrive, you need willing and able customers to come and pay for stuff. And if they're not working, they can't earn income, and they can't buy stuff. And the root of that is, if they're not healthy and they're not well, how the heck are they going to work? They can't work, they're not going to make money, and they can't make money, they can't. So we have a lot of leverage actually to go and speak to businesses around us and say, we want to keep people in the community healthy. Do you want to invest in buying some consults for them? Buy voucher consults, that type of thing. Get involved. And through that, you uplifting that community, and you improving their economic standing, which ultimately comes from them being healthier. And through that process, you are directly influencing how much money certain doctors, certain businesses can make. So again, just as a illustrative, so again, number of consults, these are your patients, your customers, you push as hard as you want. A consult usually on the virtual is anywhere between 7 to 15 minutes. If you contrast that with your locuming shifts, right? So you basically sitting there for an hour, maybe you see 4 patients, you make whatever the number is you guys doctors make. And then, but yeah, on this side, you obviously see, you can see as many patients as you can in that hour. So that's a big win. So yeah, so your consults, would obviously go up. We target to get to about 100 to 150 consults a month. Whatever you set your price at, again, how you market, it's going to be a slow ramp up. But once you start getting into the paid ads realm and doing all of these types of things, then your marketing costs might start going up. But yeah, we're targeting for you guys to make about 60 to 80 to 100,000 in a month on virtual care consults. Then again, my homework to you guys is to do your canvas for Engine 2 in detail and map that out. I think that's important to do. Then yeah, so we'll wrap up. We'll wrap up now with what I call ancillary streams. So this is something that came up as we were going through. A lot of the doctors were very interested in this part of it. But ancillary streams and lower LSM strategies, if you guys go read it later, this is basically what I've been speaking about throughout. Coming up with these innovative ways for people to pay for access to care for other people. Okay, so that's in the form of these voucher bundles, what we created, work care. You can do things like focus days. You can become trainers and host talks. Like some of our doctors charge like $6,000 to corporates just to go talk there, which is amazing. Which is what you guys should be doing, because again, your knowledge and your IP is in your heads. People want this information. They want to know about it. Corporate wellness days. So there's various ways that you guys can package what you offer and all the knowledge you have as a doctor. That please don't underestimate how much value it is. You can offer these things to the market through your business. So you must set a target. So we set a target for total revenue you want to make a month. So I set the target for you guys at 200,000 rand. That's more than 99% of consultants will ever make ever. So you guys can set a target for how much you want to make in the month. Right? Again, my target for you guys is 200K. I don't know if any of you have ever made 200K a month. If not, it's good money. I think it's a very, that's top 1%, top 5%, I guess, in the country from an income point of view. Yes, it's not that you're going to make that net, but if you're generating 200,000 a month with minimal overhead in the form of fixed cost, you're doing quite fine. So, and what's beautiful is you're building out your business. So this is your business that you are starting, and you're going to nurture it. It's going to be worth something at some point. It's real, it's tangible. It's not just selling of your time. The either rate limiting factor, which is time. Yes, you are one person, but getting to 200,000 and revenue is fine for you as one person. Thereafter, the business changes. If you want to bring in additional doctors and whatever, that's a different thing completely. But for you in your business, you need to set a target and break down how you want to reach that target through the different engines. Engine 1, engine 2, engine 3. Okay, then I just have a very simple illustrative 12-month ramp up again. So in month 1, this now combines the focus as well as the virtual care. So you'll see, we start in month 1, you're only doing 5 scans a week, you're only doing 5 consults a week. Maybe you're doing some ancillary, being things like locum work, right? And then I show here the hours a week that sort of takes up, right? And I worked at a max hours a week of 70, which so that if you look at this slide, basically what I'm saying is with the combination of transactional stuff. So remember all the different revenue streams. We have fee for service, we have your focus as a service, fee for service being virtual consults and things. Focus as a service where you're doing focus scans, you're still locuming, maybe you're selling work care, you're getting that into the market, you maybe have 100. If you sign up one factory, guys, one factory with 100 workers, and they're each paying you each employee is 350 a month. Boom, you're quickly hitting a 35K there. So all these things together, all the different revenue streams and income streams, as a net outcome, there'll be an amount you make, and that's how I want you guys to think about it. Think of all the different ways you can generate income. Like I said, some of our doctors charge 6,000 rand just for a talk. And I applaud it. It's amazing. It's great. Please do it more, because there's corporates that want doctors and things to come and speak, and it's just about how prepared are you to put yourself out there and do it. Okay, so this ramp up is just an illustration of how you end up getting to something like making, after everything off taken away, you're sitting at 130, 150K, which is good money, guys. I mean, I think, and obviously with your business, you don't earn a salary, so you're gonna run it through your business, and you'll chat to the SME guys, the SME tax guys when it comes to. I'm not an accountant, I'm not pretending to be one, but what's nice about running your own PTY, your own business, is obviously how you can structure things, running how you can run your life through it, basically. So it's great, really great. Firstly, you pay half the percentage tax, just as step one. And you can obviously, there's various mechanisms running it through a business that you can utilize, but we'll let the accounting guys chat to you about that. Then the last few things. So there's two metrics that's very important to us, and that's not from a GoGP point of view. And those are impact metrics and commercial metrics. And impact metrics are basically non-money related metrics, and that's more to do with care pathways and things like the impact we're having on the community. So, how many antenatal scans are we doing, or chronic scans? You set a target for that. So chronic scans being things like screening scans, hypertensives, and so on. And then antenatal scans, how many mommies are you scanning, how many babies, etc. So you set targets for that. Then public and private care pathways. If you remember, I spoke about it earlier with an example where we had this patient who we accelerated how quickly she got help at a public sector space. So that's a public-private care pathway, and that's also something we want to track. Then obviously number of virtual patients served. Did you manage to influence or impact the lower income communities through identifying funders for healthcare access? So did you find someone to pay you basically to see a bunch of people, which is something we want to track. Then your conversion rate on the referrals, and also lower income community penetration. That's very important. And what we want you guys to do is basically try and get a baseline. Let's say you go and sign up, or you partner with a GP, right? You go and have a discussion. We want you guys to get a baseline of what's currently happening there. How many female patients do they have? Do they do implants? Do they engage contraceptives? How many kids do they see? Type of thing. Just to get a baseline on numbers, so that once you get involved, you can then see, in 6 months, I increased this specific thing by X percentage. And these are the types of metrics we want you guys to track. So when you go through the slides, keep note of these, document it. We'll also give you guys some resources on tracking these things. But it's going to be something like when you do your invoice for the week, there's something we've created called the chart of accounts, which is basically going to bring in things like, you're going to define antenatal scan, you're going to define virtual male-female patient type of thing when you do invoicing. So the SME guys will look at that with you. Then commercial metrics, obviously things that are now related to revenue and money and income. So how many scans you're doing, how many virtual consults, how much money are you making, what's your profit margin, which is very important because your profit margin is obviously, so there's, so in most businesses, so I've got a business that buys and sells cars, and it does quite well. And I buy, high-end vehicles and things. And even at the high-end used car market side of things, the margin is 20%. Right? That's a good margin in a business where you are buying stock and selling stuff. The services industry, which is what we are in here, right? The services industry has a margin of 60 to 80%, which is incredible, right? If you think about it. No other business actually makes as much profit, supposed to be, as a service oriented business, because the time factor you're charging for that, but also it's supposed to minimize your cost, right? You're not having to buy in stock all the time, so that's a big win. Then we want to look at things like cost. How much does it cost you to get your scan in? How many GPs have you signed up? How many repeat scans did you have? It's how many patients have you retained in your virtual care center? So these are some of the commercial metrics we look at. Then, so I spoke to you guys here about SME.tax, which is going to help you guys with the. We're gonna introduce you guys formally to them. LibreMed is a business that I own. It's a bureau, but we handed this part of it over to SME.tax. We'll be doing that, helping you set up your company. They'll also be doing mentorship monthly, monthly check-ins with you, and so on. So yeah, I think I'm gonna stop sharing. That's pretty much that for that session. Quite a lot of information. I did share the slides with you guys in the groups, which I want you guys to go through. Obviously, these recordings will be made available to be watched later. But yeah, that's basically, not in a nutshell, but much detailed as possible, how the GoGP model is going to work and how it looks and how you guys are going to fit into that. And I'm hoping this gave you guys some more clarity and kind of tied in all the different things we did over the last week with Marlon. And yeah, it'll be a continued process. It's obviously not just a now thing. It's going to be, we'll be holding hands with you guys for the next 12 to 24 months, everybody that's involved. And we obviously want to build you guys businesses up to 200,000 Rand a month, and I'm pretty sure we'll get there. And if that excites you guys, please pop it in the chat, pop it in the WhatsApps. And yeah, if there's any questions, please ask. If none, I'm happy for us to close off. And yeah, any questions? No questions? Okay. If there's no questions, then yeah, happy for us to end off the session there. Danica will check in with everybody and those who didn't join. Just check in with you guys, and we'll share as soon as we can Marlon's notes from the last session, which I know we didn't share it, and then obviously the video for you guys to watch again. So yeah, thank you guys. Have a good evening. I really hope this clarified things for you guys. And yeah, it is a lot, I know, but I'm very confident that you guys are gonna crack this, and yeah, you guys are gonna be those. I don't know, man. I just see. It sounds so shallow, but I feel like doctors oftentimes pour from an empty cup, and I just see this revival and this change, where doctors are not just kind of hanging on and kind of just making it through, where they're thriving, right? And from that position of thriving, you can ultimately do more for patients and for the market and for the industry. So, yeah, thank you guys for those who did join tonight, and I appreciate. Thanks for the comments also, Tasman, and the rest of you guys. So, yeah, let me go and see my daughter. She's waiting for me outside the door now. But yeah, excited for the next few months, guys, and looking forward to working with all of you. And I'm very, very proud of you, and excited for you guys. So yeah, all right. Take care, guys. Good evening. Have a lovely evening, and enjoy. Hopefully, not working tomorrow. Probably most of us are, but I hope you guys get to braai a little bit tomorrow at least. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much. God bless you all. Cheers. Bye. Thanks, Danica. Bye.